Once again, we are together. First Sunday of Advent, we are going to hear a word from the Gospel of Mark, the 13th chapter, verses 24 through 37. Let us hear the word of the Lord. But in those days after suffering, the sun will be darkened. The moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. Then he will send out the angels and gather the elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branches become tender and put forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So, also, when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near, at every gate. Truly, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But about the day or the hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware, keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his slaves in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to be on the watch. Therefore, keep awake, for you do not know when the master of the house is coming, in the evening or at midnight, or at the cock crow, or at dawn. Or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And what shall you say except keep awake? Well, it's with a combination of fascination and fear that Christians over the centuries have repeated the question asked by the disciples. Tell us when these things will be and what signs when all these things are going to be accomplished. Surely the Bible holds the answer if only we could just decode it. If we could create a huge marketplace, maybe, by writing books telling people that we had the answer from above. We have televangelists and authors who have made a few shekels by presuming to reveal this truth to us. But it's in Mark's gospel that we get the real inside story. So for today and today only, free of charge, I'm going to reveal to you what Jesus taught about the day of the Lord and the end of the age. This revelation is told us in verse 32. About the day and the hour, no one knows, neither angels in heaven nor the Son of Man, but only the Father. Well, since that answers the question of when, I suppose I can just go sit down now and we can all just be in on this secret. Well, but actually that's not actually all there is to it. So allow me to pontificate a little bit more. For more clarity about this passage, we need to see where the question fits into the story. You see, actually, it's Peter, James, John, and Andrew who posed the question to Jesus. You see, they've been following him around Galilee on this whirlwind mission of healing people and seeing miracles of every sort, of witnessing all kinds of healings. And they've heard him challenge the spiritual leaders of his day. At last, They witness his triumphant entry into Jerusalem as the crowds chant, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." And it's left these four men primed to believe that the restoration of Israel's greatness is close at hand. They witnessed Jesus storm into the temple, overturn the tables, and accuse the authorities of turning God's house into a den of robbers. Though these fishermen were not scholars, they knew that Jeremiah's prophecy was that God would destroy the temple because it had become a place of empty religious activity. Too much worship of self and too little worship of God. Remember how the disciples were admiring the temple and tried to coax Jesus into some reassurance of admiration about the temple? It was a massive edifice, to be sure. The stones were 40 feet in length and standing more than 100 feet in height. However, Jesus doesn't stand in admiration of the temple, but rather he delivers a conversation stopper. He says, "Not one stone will be left." Everything Jesus is saying in chapter 13 is in response to the disciples' question about the destruction of the temple. Again, he is trying to demonstrate for them how shallow their thinking is. They think in temporary terms, worldly terms, rather than spiritual terms. Do not put your stock on things of this world. This world, like this building you're admiring, is going to pass away. Get your priorities straight. First century Judaism as a temple-based faith is coming to an end. When Mark writes this gospel, it's roughly 40 years after Jesus' resurrection, and certainly within the time frame of when the temple was actually destroyed. This is the historical setting for this passage. To the first century Jews, the temple's destruction would seem like the end of the world. Where would the sacrificial atonements happen? Where would God dwell? Well, it was the end of all hope and must have felt like God had abandoned them. Fear rose up in their hearts. The end of the temple would not be the end of God's witness in the world. What they would have, should have rightly feared was not the loss of the trappings of their faith, but they should have feared fear itself. The disciples didn't understand what was really at risk, which was losing the substance of their faith. Jesus is saying, turn your myopic, fear-based gaze away from your small concerns to the world around you. Things are bad out here, and they're going to get worse. This beautiful temple is not the answer to the problems you see around you. The message that can heal the world is selfless living and living in outrageous love for one another. Have they not witnessed Jesus' life over these last years they've been with him? People don't like to hear a message where someone is telling them to love their enemies, to give away their possessions, to welcome strangers. They want to have life as they knew it and have it remain the same. You want to talk about fear? Sure, you're afraid of losing your trappings of your faith, but there's a lot more at stake here. We can't give in to fear. Our witness is one of faith, not fear. The real work here for us is to push back hard against the fear. We can survive the destruction of the temple, even corrupt leaders or physical disasters and wars and betrayals by living in faith. If we give into fear of any kind, it will destroy us. In our time, we have experienced horrific events that seem like it was the closing chapter of life. I'm sure during Hitler's reign, it must have seemed that way. At 9/11 or worldwide COVID, recall the apocalyptic images of the towers on fire, of destruction raining from the skies, of the streets filled with construction debris, smoke and fire. Remember the bewilderment, the carnage, and the collapse of the sense of the order of life as we knew it, and fear of what was yet to come. Remember in COVID of how the world just seemed to stop. It was not just our little corner of the world, but the world in its entirety. Life as we knew it was dead in its tracks, it appeared. Jesus' purpose in giving this vivid description is not to give us a timetable, but to emphasize the temporary nature of life as we know it, the illusion of serving a religious structure rather than a living God. Do we wish we could have a softer message this week, this first week of Advent? Do we wish we could move this one right out of the library? But the message is clear. In Advent, we are called to come out of the darkness into the light. We will not give in to thinking that will destroy us. We're called to be bold in our living. We will speak up. We will live the radical life of Jesus with open hands and open hearts. Jesus is expecting. God is expecting. He's about to give us a new world. He's going to bring it from birth. And birth can be a violent and painful process. In the ancient world, there were no hospitals or anesthesia, so they understood what a painful process this could be. All the agony of childbirth, however, is minimized when the mother looks into the face of that new child. In John 16:21, Jesus says, when a woman is in labor, she's in pain because her hour has come. But when the child is born, she no longer remembers the anguish because of the joy of having brought a child into the world. Therefore, labor pains not only point to pain, but to hope and new life. Our passage in Mark today is Jesus speaking on the eve of his terrible suffering, when Rome attempted to destroy the temple of his body in a crucifixion. But through his suffering, a new world was created. This is the way. And Jesus says not to be alarmed. God's going to bring new life out of what looks like the end. We serve a God of hope. Someone wiser than me once said, "You never truly learn to live until you find something you wouldn't mind dying for." Perhaps this Advent we will find it. And all God's children said, Amen.